friends, it's Amanda here, and I'm back with another collaboration video. This time it's with my friend Kelly from KBellaBeauty. I truly cannot explain to you how much I love Kelly. She is just a little ray of sunshine. I feel like we just click, you know, when you meet somebody and you just have that chemistry that you just were meant to be together. You were meant to be friends. Everything is just easy peasy. That's how I feel about Kelly. She has the perfect ratio of like cool mom vibes and also DGAF energy that I need in a friend. I know that in all my collaboration videos, I always gush about how much I love my friends. So I'm going to try to keep it simple here, but just know that you'll struggle to come across a more lovely human being than Kelly. One of the things that Kelly and I have in common is a love of purple eyeshadows. So we knew when we started talking about doing a holiday season project together, something involving purple eyeshadow would be really relevant for both of us. So we landed on this idea of, instead of our favorite purple eyeshadows or our favorite purple palettes, we wanted to talk about our favorite purple features. Basically, what that means is we're going to be talking about palettes that are not a monochromatic purple color story, but really a color story that the purple is an integral part. Like, it wouldn't work if it wasn't for the purple. And this is, as are all favorites videos, a very subjective system. I'm going to be talking about my top 5, maybe I accidentally sneaked a 6th one in there, purple features. So this one was on the top of the pile, so I'll just use this Fantasy Cosmetica Rogue palette to explain. As you can see, this is not a purple palette. I don't think anybody would open this up and say, oh, this is a purple eyeshadow palette. We basically have a purple row, a blue row, and then this more green forward row. But basically, this made the list for me because I would not vibe with this color story without the purple row. So that's sort of how I was looking at it. Like, the purple is essential to the color story. So I'm going to take you through my 5-ish choices, and we're going to look at close-ups. I have swatches, and I'm going to tell you why I chose what I chose. Also, important note here, every single palette that I talk about in today's video, I do have a full swatch and review video where you can see things like comparisons or an eyeshadow look or just more information about each one of these palettes. I will link those in the description box. If you see a palette here that catches your interest and you want to know more about it, I will have more info for you in a dedicated video. All you got to do, go down to the description box, follow the link. I got you. Since I already have this palette out and on the top of my pile of feature palettes today, let's talk about the Rogue palette from Fantasy Cosmetica. Now, it's no secret that green and purple are my 2 favorite eyeshadow colors to wear, and I often like to wear them together, hence my Flora Story palette. But it's also no secret that blue is the scariest eyeshadow color for me. When I go for blue, I almost always pair it with purple because that makes it a little bit more palatable for me. It makes it a little bit easier to envision a look that feels like my style. So the purple just works perfectly with all the other colors in this palette, and I truly cannot see myself using these blues without pairing them with the purples. Now, the green I'm fine with on its own. I can easily see myself using the greens in here. I can see myself using the purples in here on their own, but I cannot envision this entire palette without this handful of purple shadows included in the Rogue palette. Certainly, there are lots of beautiful looks that have come out of this palette. Others who are big blue and green fans, perhaps, that are not really feeling the love for the purples like I am. But for me personally, these purple shades really make the palette. Now, let's talk about the Pretty Guardians for Love and Justice palette. This is the most recent Sailor Moon collaboration from ColourPop. And I didn't love the first palette, but I do love this palette. I do think this is probably the best ColourPop palette of the year, in my opinion. And this one doesn't have as high of a purple eyeshadow ratio as the Rogue palette that we just looked at, but there's a lot of purple influence in this palette, aside from just the 2 or 3 true purple shades. The pinky Secret Powers matte shade has a bit of a lavender undertone to it, as does the shimmer called Starlight, that glittery shimmer shade. So we see some of this purple influence seeping into the other shadows in the palette. And I think that without these 2 shades on the bottom middle here called Always There and Girl Power, this entire palette would have so much lack of depth, and it would severely limit the types of looks that would be able to come out of this 12 pan palette. Plus, again, we see some blue shades in here. Like I mentioned previously, I really like to pair blue and purple together to help a look just stay a little bit more within the bounds of my own personal style comfort zone. So I love the purples to help integrate the blues, to add some depth, to tie in some of these pinky shades, and also really lends a completely different quality to this palette versus the first Sailor Moon palette, because without the blue and purple here, we would have just another warm, peachy iteration, and it would be too similar to the first palette. Now, let's talk about the Clarity Cosmetics Anaconda palette. This is a newer release. They just brought this out for Black Friday. This Anaconda palette has a lot of colors going on. We have some corally, more red shades, a couple of neutrally beige, mauve, silver, some greens, and of course, a whole lot of beautiful purple shades. This Anaconda palette, similar to the Pretty Guardians palette that we just looked at, really benefits from a lot of depth coming from the purples, particularly this really deep, dark purple matte shade on the bottom row. The more cool-toned purple shades tie in really nicely to the more blue-based teal-green colors, and then we have a little bit of warmer purple shades that can tie in with the more coral and red based shadows in the palette. In the case of this Anaconda palette, I feel like the purple is the bridge that ties all of the other colors together. I just don't think that these neutrals on their own, the mauve-y and beigey neutrals, could really do that heavy lifting to bring the red, coral, teal, green all together in a way that makes sense and feels like it would produce some well-rounded and interesting looks. That's, of course, a very subjective take. Certainly, there are people who will disagree and who would love it without the purple. But for me, the purple shades just really bring it together, round it out, and make it feel complete. Now we get to the part of the video where I am going to cheat and pick 2 palettes and put it in the place of one. I am combining the Halloween Town and Christmas Town palettes that Melt Cosmetics released in collaboration with The Nightmare Before Christmas. These are, in fact, 2 separate palettes that did not release together in the same collection, but I am going to go ahead and include them as if they are one palette because I feel like the color story works the best when these 2 palettes are combined. It feels like it makes the most sense. It feels like I can produce the most well-rounded looks when I use the Halloween Town and Christmas Town palettes in conjunction with one another. They definitely have some common threads. When you see the palettes side by side, you can see there is a green and purple common thread between the 2. You can kind of tell when you see the palettes just like this side by side in the pans, but it's especially more obvious when you see them swatched all out together that this is actually a very purple heavy color story. 7 out of the 20 shades in this palette are what I would consider to be purple eyeshadows. And I realize that's still less than half, but when you look at the overall ratio of the colors in here, it's definitely the predominant shade. And I think that makes everything else make sense. It also ties in the theme from the movie so perfectly. Between these two palettes, I can get the green and purple color combo that I love. I can also get the blue and purple color combo that I love. So this is just hitting a lot of the right marks for me. And I think these palettes truly just wouldn't make sense together or with the theme without the purple. So these are a great purple feature. The last palette I want to talk about comes from Nomad Cosmetics. This is the Love and Death palette. This is a two-sided palette. It has a very love inspired side and then a death inspired side. The love side is very red and pink. The death side is a lot more dark and blue and gray and grungy. Without these little tiny purple shades down here at the bottom, particularly Dagger and Tragedy, there would be no cohesion between the two sides. We have a blue side, we have a red side. What do we need to really make it cohesive, to really make everything blend together? We need purple. This is probably the most important purple feature palette. I wish actually there was more purple in here. I could have done with a little dash of purple over on the love side, the more red and pink side. We're very red heavy, very corally heavy on that side. And I think some of those shades are a little bit too similar. So in general, this is a great purple feature because I need it to make sense. I need the purple in here to be able to make looks, but I also wish that there was more. I'm yearning for more purple, and that's how I know this is the right palette for this video. I like this palette well enough. I love the idea. I love the theme. I think some of the shade selection is missing the mark, and that could absolutely be remedied by doing what? You guessed it, adding some more purple to this color story. Now that you've seen the palettes that I chose, saw the swatches, heard about why I selected them for my top favorite purple features, I decided that I wanted to do an eye look, of course, for this video. I wanted to try to use all of the palettes, but just pulling my favorite purple from each palette would end up in a not very well-defined look. Plus, I've been looking for an excuse to do another palette bingo since I had so much fun with my holiday palette bingo with Angie. So I decided to do a palette bingo. You can already tell because you can see my eyes right now. It does end up working out that I get enough purple to make a mostly purple look. I just really lean into the purple shades that I end up with. Let's jump into a palette bingo style eye look using all of the palettes that I just talked about. I had so much fun doing the holiday palette bingo with Angie that I am using this purple feature palette video as an excuse to do another palette bingo. Could be unwise because I may end up with a very not purple look, but you know, fingers crossed. The palette bingo gods were on my side with my Angie video because I loved the way my look turned out and it ended up being actually decently cohesive for a palette bingo. Let's just keep that luck rolling, hopefully. I got my purple nails, so maybe we can channel some purple eyeshadows in this palette bingo. In no particular order, let's start with the Fantasy Cosmetica Rogue palette. This little beauty right here, and this has 9 shades. So I'm gonna pull up my little random number generator here and put minimum 1, maximum 9. And I got 2. So that would be this one. Not quite purple, but not purple. This is Sleight of Hand. It's kind of a purpley blue. Not a bad first roll. Could have been worse. Could have ended up with a powder blue. Although I guess I would have made that work too. My second shade is going to come from this ColourPop and Sailor Moon Pretty Guardian palette. This became one of my favorite ColourPop palettes of the year, and this one has 12. Shade number 3, and that is 1, 2, 3. This peach one called Schoolgirl. Okay. It's too early to call it. We'll see how this comes together. Still feeling optimistic. Let's go to the Melt Halloween Town palette next. I believe these have 10. Yes, 10. So let's change that. And I got 2. Oh, good. It's another purple. Okay. So I'll at least get a somewhat purple look. This one's called My Bugs. We're rocking and rolling. Thank goodness I got some purple. This would have to be a separate video if I didn't come up with at least something purpley. I might be playing myself right now, but I'm gonna take a shade from this Christmas Town palette as well. This one also has 10 shades. Oh, please don't give me something weird. Shade number 1, which is another matte. It's this just bluish white shade. Not my favorite choice so far, but it's kind of like a nothing shade for me. It doesn't really do that much for me, but we'll at least, we can do a little brow bone highlight maybe. I don't know. We'll figure something out. I really hope I get some more purple, or at least something not crazy. Oh, this one's called No One's Dead, by the way. Next up is the Anaconda palette from Clarity. This was in my video with Angie too, and I ended up getting this very beige, like the one beige, boring, basic shade in this palette. So we'll see what happens. I would love to get a purple out of this palette. I got 10. Let's see what that one is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, well, it's a purple. It is a purple. I have only gotten 1 shimmer so far. Oh my gosh. Okay. How am I going to make this work? I need a shimmer from my last palette or else I will be struggling with this look. This Nomad palette is basically 2 9-pan palettes put together, which means it has 18 shades. So we're going to change my random number generator from 1 to 18. Because of the way this is set up, it could be kind of confusing. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Hopefully you understand. Like, I'm not treating this as 2 separate palettes, but just going across the whole top row, middle row, etc. And we get shade number 18. All right. That's the last one, right? Okay. Well, it's another matte. At least it's a purple. I was going to be really thrown off if I got one of those reds, but this is a very matte look. This is a very matte look. You know what? This could have gone worse. I really wish that I had another shimmer in here. So here's the color story I ended up with. It's not terribly purple. It is very, very matte. This is kind of looked like a purple in the pan, but it's definitely a deep maroonish red type of color. I don't know what to do with this, but I guess I will figure something out. Not terrible. It could have been way, way worse, but I'm really not quite certain where I'm going to go with this yet. I'm going to have to lean heavily on these purple shades to really give me a purple look. Wish me luck. Just like always, I'm starting with my favorite eye primer. This is the Ulta Matte Eye Primer. Just dabbing a little bit of that onto the lids and trying to formulate a plan in my head. I decided to start with this shade called Schoolgirl from the Pretty Guardians palette, and I'm using one of the new Singe Beauty eye brushes. This is the EO6 brush, and it reminds me of a slightly larger version of the ColourPop blending brush, which, if you've been around this channel for a while, you may know is probably my all-time favorite eyeshadow brush. I have like 10 of them. I use it every single time I do my makeup. So this reminds me of that brush, and I love that. So I'm starting with this little corally pink shade in the crease. Then I'm going to add My Bugs from the Halloween Town palette. So glad that I landed on this purple shade. And I'm going to start gently building that up on the outer part of my lid and up towards the outer part of my crease. I do sort of end up burying this peachy pink shade, but I'm going to go back and blend with it over and over again. Even though the color does get a little bit lost in the sauce in the end result of the look, it was still an important part of the process. And I'm also going to later on add it to my lower lash line. So I tried my best not to hide any of these colors, but for this particular look, just because this is a purple video, I definitely was more purple forward in my choices and my placement. Because this is a very matte look, I only ended up with one shimmer, despite the palette bingo gods smiling on me with a few purple colors. I did only end up with one shimmer, and typically I would pile on a bunch of super shiny metallic shades over my lid because that's what I like the best. But in this case, I'm not going to be able to do that. So I'm really taking my time layering, blending, focusing more on placement than I usually do. I tend to be a little bit messier with my eye looks. So today I'm taking it slower. I'm being a little bit more precise. Here I'm using the No One's Dead shade from the Christmastown palette on a very small little flat brush, applying that along the brow bone for a little bit of a highlight, and also really piling that on the inner corner to highlight that inner corner area. Typically not how I would use a shade like this. I don't tend to go for this type of look, but palette bingo calls for a switch up, and that's what we're doing. Now I'm using His and Hers from Clarity's Anaconda palette. And again, just going hard with the purple here, really trying my best to make this as purpley of a look as possible. So I'm packing that on the outer part of my lid and just the slightest bit blending up into that crease area. But I don't want to lose the other shades that I've already layered and blended and spent my time applying. Aside from the grayish matte highlighted areas, this is a pretty typical setup for a look for me so far. I made an executive decision to use the My Bugs shade, and just using my fingertip, I applied that to the empty space left after I used the Anaconda palette shade because I really want to push this shimmery shade called Sleight of Hand from the Rogue palette into a decidedly purple arena. If you layer this shade over a blue matte, then it looks much, much more blue. But using this purpley matte base really helped to get us into the purple eyeshadow territory that I was hoping for. Now that I think about it, Sleight of Hand is such a good name for this shadow because it can definitely switch up on you depending on what you layer it with. Now for the finishing touches, I first applied Schoolgirl from the Pretty Guardians palette all along my lower lash line, and I really smudged that out quite a bit because I'm going to go back with a deeper shade and I want to use this as sort of a blend transition type of color. So I'm using Dark from Nomad's Love and Death palette to smudge along the upper and lower lash lines. I know I'm kind of doing a disservice to this shade. I am a little bit hiding it in the look just because I don't want this to turn into a red look. And if I went too hard with this burgundy shade, I feel like I could drag some of these purples to be more red. So that's my excuse, but I am featuring it as a not quite liner, but I just smudged it on with that Singe EO7 brush. That's the other new eye brush from Singe Beauty. Really like both of these eye brushes. Really like the way this eye look turned out after I curled my lashes and added a little bit of mascara. It feels suddenly very intentional. It's not like this was the most challenging palette bingo selection I've ever gotten, but I'm so happy that I ended up with a great purple feature look for my purple feature video. I don't even mind how matte heavy this selection was because in the end, everything came together and gave me a really pretty and easy to achieve cohesive look. So I just really leaned in to those basically 3 purple shades that I got, and everything else is just a supporting cast. But we were able to pull it off, especially with that purple matte under this more blue shimmer shade, really made it look more purple than it actually is. Could have been worse. I feel like I got lucky again. I just wish that I had more than one shimmer, but it's cute. I'll wear this. Maybe not the gray on the inner corner. It doesn't look terrible. It's just not my go-to, but it looks fine. I think it's fine. It looks fine. I had so much fun thinking about these color stories and how they feature purple, how my favorite eyeshadow shade is integral to all of these different color stories. I did decide to restrain myself from choosing my Flora Story palette. I just thought that would be maybe a little bit too conceited, even for a YouTuber and a Sagittarius. Because truly, I mean, I'm talking about it now, so I guess I failed that test anyway. But this one should be on the list. I thought that might come off the wrong way, but you know, let's just throw it in there. This is also a great purple feature, according to me anyway. This was a really fun way to take a fresh look at some palettes that I've already been using, I've already reviewed. I'll take any excuse to play with purple eyeshadow. I can't wait to see which palettes Kelly chose for her video. I highly recommend that you go watch her video, go subscribe to her channel, go follow her on Instagram. She and her husband just started a new travel Instagram as well. So go check that out. I'm going to link everything in the description box. She is just truly such an angel on earth. Nothing I say will do justice to it. Just go give her a follow. I know you're going to love her as much as I do. Now's the time when I want to hear what you think. What are your favorite purple features? What palettes do you think really spotlight and feature and integrate purple eyeshadows really, really well into their color stories? I love to hear what you think about things too, so make sure you leave all your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! What am I trying to say? The words are not flowing today. I was down and out for like 2 days with a migraine, and I'm just not bouncing back as well as I wanted to. It really messed up my filming schedule and my editing schedule, and I feel a little thrown off. It's okay though. It's okay. It's gonna be fine. I feel better now. Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled programming. Is it just me? Oh, excuse you, Maggie. ColourPop didn't really do a lot of palettes that I loved this year for the first time in like 8 years. Well, probably not that long. I don't think they've been making palettes for that long, because when I first started, they didn't have pressed powder or anything. But they didn't really kill it this year, in my opinion. Okay, if you love something they made, that's great. I'm happy for you. I just didn't get to experience that this year. But I do actually really like this palette. Here's where the matching nails can really come into play. I know this is probably cheating, but I don't care because I made up the idea, so I can do what I want. Not bad. That's a wrap. Not really, I have more to film. Okay. For the highlighted, so highlighted, I apologize to all Australians for what I just said. Okay, it's not the look I usually go for, but that's fine. Oh my gosh, okay, I'm getting distracted by my emails. I will finish my video and then do emails. One thing at a time. Here's a picture of me and Kelly. I just got to see her. I love her so much. I know I look like a big cheese ball in all my pictures with her because I'm so happy every time I get to hang out with her. She is a wonderful person and very sweet and very smart and very funny and very caring. And I don't know if I want her to adopt me and be my mom or marry me and be my dream girl. But either way, I would take either one. Whatever I can get. Was that weird? I don't know, maybe. Here we are. Oh boy. The girls will get it. You know what I mean? Thanks for watching. Thanks for putting up with all my shenanigans. Purple eyeshadow and vibes and just being weird and caffeinated. That's really all I got going on over here. And these cute flower earrings that I made. I'm happy to see your beautiful face here again. It's always a pleasure. I hope I'll see you soon, and I love your face. Okay, bye.